The smoke curled into the darkening sky like a living thing, black and heavy. Flames licked the edges of the old barn, hungrily consuming everything inside. Tom's boots sank into the muddy ground, his hands shaking, and his chest felt hollow. "God damn it," he muttered, watching the fire eat the hay he'd stacked himself that morning. His sister Lydia stood behind him, hands clasped tight, her face pale. "Tom, what happened?" she whispered. "Don't know. Don't care right now. It's gone," he said, his voice tight. "Everything's gone." From the edge of the yard, Harold's laughter rang sharp. "Looks like you finally made something useful." Tom smoke and ashes. He sauntered closer, boots crunching on scattered straw, a smug grin plastered across his face. "Guess this is why no one ever takes you seriously." Tom's jaw clenched. "It's just hay. Just animals. Just animals." Harold's laughter cut deeper. "Just your sorry life. You think that heap of mud you call a barn matters. You're still dirt poor. Nothing changes." Lydia flinched. "Harold, stay out of it." "Lydia," he snapped, spinning toward her. "This is between me and him." Tom turned back to the fire. The horses in the smaller pens stamped and whinnied, frantic. Smoke filled his lungs, but he barely noticed. He could feel the weight of Harold's words pressing down, heavier than the flames. "You think this proves something?" Tom said finally. "You think laughing at me changes who I am?" Harold stepped closer, lowering his voice, sharp and deliberate. "I don't think, Tom, I know. I've seen your life. Seen your nothing. And I enjoy it. Enjoy it." Tom's hands curled into fists. "You enjoy this?" "I do." Harold's grin widened. "Watching you sweat, watching you fail, watching your sister cling to your side like she's protecting a sinking ship." Lydia's eyes flicked between them. Her voice was low but firm. "Tom, let's just get out of here." "I can't," Tom said. "Not yet." His gaze followed the fire devouring the roof, the wooden beams collapsing with a loud crack. Ash rained down, mingling with the mud and blood-red sunset. "Not until I know it's over." "You'll never have anything," Harold said, stepping over the wet straw. "Never land, never respect. Just pathetic attempts." Tom swallowed hard, the lump in his throat heavy. He wanted to grab Harold, to shake him, to make him understand, but the rage stayed inside, simmering. Instead, he stared at the barn, the smell of char and smoke clinging to his clothes. He remembered his father standing here years ago, pointing at the old beams. "Protect what you have, Tom, even if it's just this." And now it was gone. "I'll rebuild," Tom said, voice low but steady. "It'll take time, but I'll rebuild." Harold laughed again, sharp and cruel. "Rebuild? You think anyone cares about you rebuilding? Everyone knows you'll just fail. Same as always." "Maybe I will," Tom admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "But maybe I won't. And maybe someday you'll look at me and regret opening your mouth tonight." Harold's eyes narrowed, the grin faltering. "Empty threats. You're nothing without this land, without these animals." Tom didn't respond. His eyes scanned the burned timbers, the twisted metal, the blackened earth. Each shadow felt like a wound. His mind traced back to the long winters, to the unpaid taxes, to the neighbors' sneers, to his sister covering for him. He thought of the badge his father had left him, a token of family pride, buried somewhere under the ashes. Maybe it was time to dig it out. Maybe it was time for more than just surviving. "You talk too much," Harold said, finally. He spat into the mud and turned toward the house, muttering, "Hope this keeps you humble, brother-in-law." Tom watched him go, heart pounding, mind spinning. Lydia's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. "Tom," she said softly. He didn't turn. No, not yet. Together, they stared at the barn, blackened and broken. The animals were quiet now, except for the low moans of a trapped goat somewhere in the ruins. Smoke drifted across Tom's face, and in the red-orange glow, he saw something clear for the first time. Humiliation might be heavy, but it could be survived. Anger could become fuel. Poverty could become a challenge, not a sentence. And Harold's laughter would not be the last word. The sun sank lower, flames reduced to embers, and Tom clenched his fists. He smelled the ash, bitter and sharp, and he swore silently that the next time Harold saw him, it would be different. Not just surviving, rising, owning, winning. The memory of tonight would be a shadow on Harold's life, and he would carry it silently, planning, waiting, shaping a future. The fire had taken much, but it had not taken resolve. Not yet. He knelt briefly, brushing ash from a charred beam, and looked toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond the smoke and mud, a life waited. One that belonged to him, if he dared to claim it. Lydia's hand slipped into his, light but steady. "We'll get through this," she said. "Yes," Tom replied, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. "We will." The barn smoldered behind them, black and hollow. The air was heavy with smoke, but also with a promise, the first spark of what was to come. Tom stood at the edge of the burnt barn, the last embers casting a dim orange glow across the fields. Smoke hung low, curling in the cool evening air, and the wind carried the smell of char and wet earth. His hands itched to do something, to grab anything, to fight back. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the small badge his father had left him, the metal dulled and scratched. He turned it over in his palm, feeling the weight of it. It was more than a badge, it was a reminder that someone in his bloodline had fought, had survived, and had demanded dignity, even when the world tried to strip it away. "Tom." A voice broke his thoughts. Ben stepped out from the shadow of the fence, hands in his pockets, eyes wary. "Ain't safe to linger here. Not tonight. I'm not leaving," Tom said, voice low. "Not yet. Not until I know where I stand." Ben raised his eyebrows, stepping closer. "You think you gotta stand? The world out here don't care about your ashes. It's Harold and his money. That's it. Nothing else matters." Tom laughed, short and bitter. "You think I don't know? I've seen it every day. Seen him laughing while I scrape by. Heard him mocking me in my own yard. But maybe that's about to change." Ben's jaw tightened. "Change how? You got nothing? No land, no cattle, no leverage. Just words and bruises." "Words cut too deep sometimes," Tom said. "Deeper than fire." He held the badge up. "But this is something I can hold on to. Something that tells me I'm not nothing. My father, my family, we didn't bend. Why should I?" Ben shook his head. "I don't know if fire and pride can buy back what you lost. You're walking into a game you can't see all the rules for." "I've seen enough rules," Tom said, staring toward the dark horizon. "And I've seen how they bend against people like me. That's the reason I have to play it. And play it differently. Play it smarter." Ben's eyes followed Tom's gaze. "You serious about this? Leaving? Going after something bigger than just surviving?" Tom nodded. "Every day I stay, Harold gets bigger. He takes everything I can't hold on to. I need to stop him. I need to own something that can't be taken from me." A silence fell between them. Only the occasional crack of smoldering timber broke it. Then Ben said, "You remember your father? How he used to stand right here, same spot, talking about pride and debts owed." "I remember," Tom said. "He'd warn me about letting others decide your worth, about standing when everyone expects you to kneel." His voice trembled slightly, not with fear, but with old grief. "I thought I understood it back then. Now I know I never did. Not until tonight." Ben's expression softened. "And Lydia, she's scared," Tom admitted. "I can't blame her. She's always tried to protect me from this, from the world." He clenched his fists, feeling the sting of ash on his knuckles. But she can't protect me forever. I have to do this myself. Ben exhaled sharply. So, what's the plan? You just leave and hope the world bends to your will. Tom shook his head. I leave to learn, to gain what I need. Skills, money, influence. Things Harold can't mock, can't steal. And then, his voice dropped. Then I come back, and it won't be the same anymore. Ben studied him, the lines of worry on his face deepening. You think the town'll even notice you've gone? Tom smiled faintly. That's the point. I vanish, move in silence. Let Harold keep laughing. Let him feel safe. The longer he believes he's untouchable, the better it will be when I return. Ben ran a hand through his hair. You've always had fire in you, but fire alone won't rebuild everything you lost. I know, Tom said. I have to be more than fire. I have to be patient. I have to be strategy. I have to be everything Harold isn't. He paused, feeling the cool breeze against his face. Shadows lengthened across the fields, stretching like fingers across the burnt earth. I'll take the badge with me, he said. It's a piece of who I am, a reminder of what I come from. Ben nodded slowly, a reluctant approval in his eyes. You sure you can do it? Alone? Tom turned, his eyes burning with resolve. I'll never be alone. Not really. The past, my father, my family, they're all with me. And this time, I'm not leaving scraps behind. I'm taking the whole fight with me. Ben exhaled again, a long, heavy sound. Then go quietly. Don't let anyone see you leave. Let the world think you're broken. Let it think you're nothing. That's the plan, Tom said. He adjusted the badge in his pocket and stepped off the muddy path toward the open fields. Each step was deliberate, measured, and filled with a quiet fury. He glanced back once, at the ruined barn, at Lydia's pale face, at Ben's hesitant figure, then forward again. The wind carried the smoke behind him, and he walked steadily into the growing darkness. The town remained unaware as he moved, unnoticed and silent. The horizon stretched wide and empty before him. Every step was an oath, every breath a promise to reclaim dignity, land, and respect. By the time anyone realized he was gone, he would already be shaping his return. The last light of dusk faded, and the fields lay silent and watchful. Tom walked through them with purpose, the badge pressed tight in his hand. It was a small thing, but it held the weight of generations. A symbol, a guide, a challenge, and he would answer it. The road stretched ahead like it never ended. Dirt packed hard under Tom's boots, dust rising in thin clouds behind each step. He had left the smoldering ruins behind him, but the smell of ash clung to his clothes and skin. The nights were colder now, the days longer, the silence sharper. He carried no wagon, no horse, just a small satchel with bread, water, and the tarnished badge pressed against his chest. By the 5th day, his legs throbbed, and his throat burned from dust. He stopped by an old well at the roadside, lowering the rope, waiting for water to rise. The bucket came up dry, its bottom cracked. He stared at it, jaw tight, then shoved it aside. You look like hell, a voice called from the brush. Tom turned quickly. A man in a tattered hat stepped out, chewing on a twig. His eyes were wary but not unkind. Traveling far? The stranger asked. Far enough, Tom answered. Got a horse? No. The man smirked. Then you're traveling wrong. Tom's lips tightened. Maybe, but I'm still moving. The man nodded, amused. Suit yourself. Roads like these don't care who walks them. They'll eat you just the same. Tom gave no reply, only kept walking. The stranger watched him go until he disappeared around the bend. By the 7th day, his shoes split at the seams. Blisters tore at his heels. He stopped only when the sun dipped low, lying under trees, staring at the stars. His father's voice echoed in memory. The road don't care about you, son. But if you keep walking, maybe it'll take you somewhere worth standing. He clutched the badge in his hand until sleep dragged him under. When the city finally appeared on the horizon, it wasn't shining or welcoming. It was loud, crowded, and gray. The streets stank of sweat and smoke, wagons rattling over broken stones. People moved fast, heads down, eyes sharp. Tom felt like a ghost wandering through bodies that didn't see him. Inside a worn inn by the corner, he dropped his satchel on the table. The innkeeper, a round woman with tired eyes, looked him over. "You paying or staring?" she asked. Tom slid the last of his coins across the counter. "One night. That's all it'll get you." She shoved a key toward him. "Room upstairs. Try not to bleed on the sheets." "I don't plan to," Tom said. The woman gave a half smile. "Nobody ever does." In the room, the bed sagged, the walls cracked, the smell of mildew thick. Tom sat on the edge, elbows on his knees. For the first time since leaving home, doubt pressed in. He had nothing. No cattle, no barn, no family close enough to lean on. Just a promise to himself and a badge from a dead man downstairs. The inn filled with noise boots on floors, mugs slamming, voices sharp. Tom joined them, needing food, needing the sound of others. A man with a scar running across his cheek sat beside him, sipping ale. "You knew?" the man asked. Tom nodded. "Just arrived. Looking for work? Looking for land." The man barked a laugh. "Land? Around here, only thing for sale is misery." Tom's gaze hardened. "Then I'll start with misery." The scarred man studied him, amused. "You've got guts. I'll give you that. But guts won't buy dirt. You'll need coin. And coin comes hard." "I'll find a way," Tom said simply. The man leaned closer. "Be careful saying things like that out loud. Folks here smell desperation. They'll bleed you dry if they hear it." Tom swallowed his pride. "Thanks for the warning." The man tipped his mug. "Don't thank me yet. You'll see what I mean soon enough." Later that night, Tom spread scraps of paper across the small table in his room. He borrowed charcoal from the innkeeper, scratching crude lines fields. Rivers, railroads he'd heard of, names of landowners whispered downstairs. He circled places where soil was said to be rich, where fences were weak, where old men were selling cheap. He stared at the messy map, breathing slow. "If Harold can grow rich off land, so can I," he muttered. "But I'll do it smarter. I'll take what no one sees coming." The badge sat beside the paper, the metal catching candlelight. He touched it gently, whispering words his father once said. "Dignity is the only land a man owns until he takes more." A knock rattled the door. Tom stiffened. "You awake?" It was the innkeeper's voice. "Yes." She pushed the door open, arms crossed. "Word is you're asking about land. Careful who you talk to." "I'm not hiding it," Tom said. "Maybe you should," she replied. "Men around here don't like strangers dreaming big. They'll push you into the ground before you get started." Tom stood. "I've already been pushed into the ground. I'm done staying there." She studied him, eyes narrowing. "Then maybe you're the kind of man who either rises or dies trying." "I can't decide which yet." "Neither can I," Tom said. She smirked faintly. "Get some sleep. Roads twist. People twist worse. You'll need strength for both." She left, closing the door. Tom sat again, staring at the candle flame. The noise downstairs faded into muffled hums. He touched the badge once more, then pressed it into his pocket. He felt like a ghost walking streets that didn't care if he vanished, but he also felt something else sharp and steady. When morning came, he stepped out into the crowded road. The city buzzing with life that wasn't his. He blended into it, nameless and unnoticed. His satchel was light, but his purpose was heavy. Each step forward was one further from shame, one closer to power. The road behind had been long and cruel, but the road ahead promised more. He wasn't afraid of either anymore. The town smelled of dust and old ink. Tom walked streets where shop windows glared back like silent judges. He felt the weight of strangers' eyes, but kept his head low. Hunger gnawed, yet pride burned hotter. He had nothing but calloused hands and a will that refused to die. That was when he met Samuel. The man was seated on the porch of a narrow brick office. Ledger in hand, boots polished, hat tilted as though the world already belonged to him. His voice carried easy confidence. "You look lost, son." Tom stopped. "I'm not your son," Samuel smirked. "Not yet. But you're looking for something. I can see it. I'm looking for work. Work." Samuel laughed softly. "There's no money in sweat anymore. The money's in paper, deeds, promises. Men trade land they'll never touch, and still they get rich. That interests you?" Tom's jaw tightened. "Land interests me." Samuel closed the ledger and stood. "Then come inside. Let's see what kind of man you are." The office was small, but smelled of power ink, dust, polished wood. Samuel laid the ledger on the table. Pages of numbers sprawled like secret maps. He tapped the edge. "This is war, fought with pence. Forget plows. Forget barns. You want revenge. You'll need this." Tom stared at the numbers. "I don't read much." "Then you'll learn," Samuel said. "You learn fast, or you starve. Now, tell me, what did you lose?" Tom hesitated. "A barn, livestock, dignity." Samuel nodded. "Good loss is a teacher. Wealth is the only answer that silences laughter. Not fists, not fire. Wealth. You ready to compromise for it?" Tom's eyes narrowed. "What kind of compromise?" Samuel leaned closer. "You'll buy land from widows who can't pay taxes. You'll sell promises to men too desperate to read the fine print. You'll make enemies. You'll sleep uneasy, but you'll rise." Tom said nothing. Samuel studied him. "So, what's stronger, your pride or your hunger?" Tom finally spoke. "Both." The older man chuckled. "Then maybe you'll survive." Days turned into weeks. Tom shadowed Samuel, watching him bend men with words sharper than any blade. Deeds passed through his hands like ghostly currency. Each signature felt like theft, yet also like power. One night, by lamplight, Tom sat over his own ledger. His hand shook as he tried to copy numbers. Samuel entered, pouring whiskey. "You'll never master the ink if you treat it like scripture. Relax. This isn't holy. It's survival." Tom muttered, "Feels like lying." Samuel drank deep. "Everything's a lie, boy. Farmers tell themselves rain will come. Widows tell themselves love lasts. You tell yourself you're still a rancher. Lies keep people breathing. You're learning to profit from them." Tom closed the ledger. "And what if the lie catches up?" Samuel smiled coldly. "By then, you'll own enough to crush the truth." The silence grew heavy. Tom thought of his father's voice, warning him that paper was a cage stronger than iron. Yet he also remembered Harold's laughter in the firelight, the stench of burning hay, Lydia's silence. He swore never to be humiliated again. At dawn, Samuel led him to a courthouse. Inside, a clerk shuffled papers like a priest of numbers. Samuel whispered instructions. Tom's pulse raced. The clerk slid across a document, a deed, land he had never seen, bought with borrowed credit under Samuel's name. "Sin," Samuel said. Tom's hand hovered. "This isn't mine. It will be. Ink first, land later." Tom swallowed hard, then signed. The pen scratched like a blade. Outside, the air felt strange. He looked at his name on paper, binding him to a future that smelled nothing like earth or cattle. It smelled of debt, risk, and fire turned to ink. That night, Samuel poured another drink. "You've taken your first step. You're not a rancher anymore. You're a player." Tom asked. And if I fail? Samuel grinned. Failure's just poverty, with a new coat. You've worn it before. But win, and you'll own the men who mocked you. Tom stared at the ledger, its pages like silent weapons. He knew there was no turning back. Teach me everything, he said. Samuel raised his glass. To fortune, then. The clink of glass echoed like a gunshot. Tom worked harder. He learned to read deeds, to smell weakness in men's voices, to calculate the worth of desperation. Each day chipped away at the old rancher. Each night he dreamed of Lydia's husband sneering, the barn burning. He imagined returning not with fists, but with papers that would strip Harold's wealth piece by piece. Yet unease stalked him. He felt eyes on him in the streets, whispers behind his back. In the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. Ink had stained his hands darker than soot. One evening, as he locked the office, a stranger muttered, "Paper's a curse. Once you sign, it owns you." Tom turned, but the street was empty. Only the wind moved. Back inside, he found Samuel laughing. "You'll hear that plenty. The cursed always resent the clever." Tom asked, "You believe that?" Samuel poured whiskey. "I believe men fall into two kinds, those who sign and those who lose." Tom took the glass but didn't drink. He thought of his father's badge, hidden deep in his satchel, the only relic of honesty he had left. Its weight felt heavier each day. Still, he pressed forward. Deals grew larger. His name spread. By the end of the season, Samuel handed him a thick stack of papers. "These are yours now. You've earned them." Tom looked down. Each page was land, future, power. He touched the ink, wondering if it burned like fire. He signed again. This time, his hand did not shake. The ledgers lay before him, silent weapons. Fire was gone, replaced by ink. He felt the old rancher buried, replaced by something colder, something sharper, and though he didn't know it yet, every stroke of the pen was drawing him closer to home. The office was quiet, except for the creak of the chair. Tom sat at the desk with a stack of unopened envelopes. Dust clung to them. Samuel had tossed them on the table earlier with a shrug. "From home," he'd said. Tom's hand hovered, reluctant. Home was fire and shame. Still, he broke the seal. The first letter carried Lydia's handwriting, neat, but pressed too hard into the page. "Tom, the barn is gone. Harold says you were careless. I told him it was lightning." He laughed. Tom's lips tightened. He muttered to the empty room, "It wasn't lightning." He read on. "I miss the quiet when Pa was alive. Harold fills the house with guests. They drink, they mock. He tells them stories about you, about the fire. I keep silent." Tom whispered, "You shouldn't keep silent, Lydia." The next line struck harder. "I hear Harold at night, counting coins out loud, as if to prove something. He says your kind will never rise. He says, poverty runs in your blood." Tom slammed the paper down. "He doesn't know my blood," he growled. The second letter smelled faintly of smoke. Lydia's words ran quicker this time. "Tom, they took another acre from us. Harold traded it away for whiskey debts." I argued. He laughed again. "I think of you working hard, somewhere far. But I wonder if you remember me." Tom whispered back, "I remember." He rubbed his eyes, the ink smearing on his fingertips. The stains felt heavier than Samuel's ledgers. He picked up the page again. "I remember," he said louder, as though she could hear. Another envelope torn open. Lydia's voice grew sharper on paper. "I'm lonely, Tom. Women here speak kindly, but their eyes pity me. They see Harold's wealth, but they also see the way he treats me. He says I should be grateful. I say nothing. Some nights I think of leaving, but where would I go?" Tom spoke into the silence. "You'd come to me." The words felt strange, heavy, like promises he wasn't sure he could keep. The fourth letter cut deeper. "Tom, Harold is buying more cattle. he boasts. They graze on land that should have been yours. He calls it progress. I call it theft. I don't think he fears you. He says you'll die forgotten. Tom's knuckles whitened. I'll remind him. He pushed back from the desk, pacing the room. Samuel walked in, raising a brow. Reading ghosts. Tom snapped. Letters. Samuel smirked. Family wants sympathy, not fortune. Careful, boy. Paper binds more than deeds. Tom held up the page. He mocks me. He mocks blood. Samuel poured whiskey. Let him. Every insult he throws builds your fire. But don't waste it on rage. Use it. Tom sat again, staring at the ink. She's my sister, and he's her husband, Samuel said coldly. You want to rescue her? Rescue yourself first. Wealth wins battles family never could. Tom said nothing. That night he opened the final letter. Lydia's tone was weary. Tom, I don't write to beg. I only want you to know the truth. Harold's wealth grows, but so does his cruelty. He says your silence proves him right. Sometimes I wonder if you'll ever return. Sometimes I think you've forgotten us. Tom's throat tightened. I didn't forget. He read the last line again and again. If you come back as more than the brother who lost a barn. The words cut. He clenched the page until it tore. Ink smeared across his fingers like blood. Samuel watched from the doorway. What does she want? Tom's voice was low. She wants me to rise. Then rise with paper, not fists. Tom stood, fists shaking. I'll rise with both. The room felt smaller. The letters lay scattered, black words glowing under the lamplight. He gathered them carefully, pressing them flat. His father's badge lay beside them in the drawer. Old truth and new ink. He touched both, torn between what was buried and what was becoming. Outside, the town was dark. He stepped into the street, the air sharp against his face. He whispered Lydia's name, like a vow. Samuel called after him. Where are you going? Tom didn't turn. Home. He felt the pull of distance, the road twisting through his mind like a wound. He pictured Harold's smirk, Lydia's tired eyes, the burned barn that once smelled of hay. He clenched his fists tighter around the letters. The ink on his skin felt permanent. Paper had bridged the miles, but it had also bound him to return. The sun dropped low when Tom crossed the ridge. The valley stretched beneath him, but it wasn't the land he remembered. Fences sagged. Gates leaned open. Grass grew wild in the ditches. The air carried a faint smoke that never seemed to leave. He slowed his horse, eyes fixed on the ranch house far off, dark against the fading sky. Twilight clung to everything like a warning. At the edge of town he passed the old mill. Boards nailed across its windows looked fresh, but the building leaned as if it had been abandoned years. A man stood near the well, shoulders hunched, staring into the water. Tom pulled the reins and stopped. Evening, Tom said. The man glanced up, wary. Evening. Mill closed. Closed. Sheriff says no use keeping it open. Harold owns the grain now. Tom tightened his jaw. All of it. Most. What he don't own, he taxes. Tom studied him. The man shifted under the silence, then spat into the dirt. You new here? Not new, Tom answered. Just been gone. Recognition flickered in the man's eyes. You're him. The one with the burned barn. Tom's mouth thinned. I'm the one with the land that was taken. The man looked down into the well. Land don't belong to memory. Belongs to money. Tom nudged the horse forward, leaving the words behind. Further down the road, children stood near a broken fence. They watched him pass without speaking. Their eyes were hollow, quiet in a way children shouldn't be. He slowed again, but none waved. Chickens scratched in the dust, feathers ragged. Even the animals seemed subdued. At the crossroads, he met Clara, the innkeeper's daughter, carrying a basket. She froze when she saw him. Tom. Yes. I thought you left for good. I came back. Her lips pressed tight. You shouldn't have. Harold doesn't like ghosts returning. Tom leaned down in the saddle. And what do you like, Clara? I liked when folks weren't afraid to speak, afraid of Harold. She glanced around, afraid of the silence after him. What's he done? What hasn't he? She whispered. He takes, and no one stops him. Sheriff says law is Harold's word now. Tom asked, and Lydia? Clara looked away. She wears fine dresses, but her eyes don't match them. She don't laugh anymore. Tom straightened. Where can I find Harold? She stepped back. Where you always could. At the house on the hill. He rode on. The valley grew darker, fences more broken. A cow lay dead near the creek, ribs sharp beneath loose hide. No one came to move it. Tom stared at it until the horse snorted and pushed forward. At the blacksmith's, sparks flew half-heartedly. The old man lifted his head. Evening, evening, Tom replied. You're back. I am. The blacksmith hammered once, metal clanging hollow. Men whisper Harold's name like it's a curse, but they still pay him. You think you'll change that? I didn't come to whisper, Tom said. The blacksmith met his eyes, then nodded once. Then don't waste words. This town's drowning in them. Tom rode past silent fields. Smoke curled from the horizon, not from fire, but from smoldering piles of waste. He remembered his father walking these same roads, teaching him to mend fences, to respect the land. Now the fences fell, and no one lifted a hand. His chest tightened. It felt as if the valley itself resisted breath. Near the ridge, an old woman sat on a porch rocking in silence. She didn't move when he passed. Her gaze followed him, flat and endless, as though she had seen this ride before in some other life. Tom felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders, the haunting not of ghosts, but of people too tired to fight. Finally, the house came into view, bigger than before, with new stone walls and wide steps leading to a porch lined with lanterns. Yet, even in its grandeur, the place looked hollow. Windows gaped like watchful eyes. Smoke curled faint from a chimney, though the night was warm. Tom reined in at the bottom of the hill. His breath caught. The air carried the faint smell of old ash, the kind that never left clothes even after years. He saw again the barn aflame, Harold's laughter, cutting sharper than fire. He whispered to himself. Not this time. A rider came down the hill, lantern swinging from his saddle. The man squinted. Who's there? Tom? The rider paused, then chuckled. Thought you'd buried yourself somewhere. Harold said, you'd never crawl back. Tell Harold I'm not crawling. Tom said. The rider grinned in the lantern light. I'll tell him. But you ought to know. He doesn't like being surprised. Neither do I. The man rode on, leaving Tom in the dark. He sat still, the horse shifting beneath him, twilight closing in around the valley. The fences, the animals, the silence of the people, they all pressed against him. Shadows clung to the land like an old curse, but he no longer feared it. He nudged the horse forward, eyes locked on the house that had swallowed his family's name. Twilight deepened. The ranch house waited at the top of the hill, silent, watchful, daring him to climb. Tom rode into town at dawn, dust trailing behind him like smoke from a slow fire. The main street was quiet, shutters half closed, dogs stretched across porches. He dismounted at the land office, boots hitting the ground with a sound that drew eyes from the saloon across the road. He adjusted his hat, brushed his coat sleeve, and stepped inside. The clerk, a thin man with ink stains on his cuffs, glanced up. You again? Tom laid folded bills on the counter. 3 parcels. East Ridge, south of the creek. That strip by the old mill road. The clerk blinked. That's Harold's pasture. Not anymore. You think buying his scraps makes a dent? I don't think. I know. The clerk swallowed, pushing forms across the desk. Sign it then. Tom scrawled his name, slow and deliberate. He lifted his hand, fingers smudged with ink, and pressed the papers flat. "You best watch yourself," the clerk muttered. "Everyone keeps saying that." Tom gathered the deeds, folded them neat, and slipped them into his coat. Maybe Harold ought to watch himself. When he stepped outside, 2 men leaned against the saloon wall, whispering. One spat in the dirt, eyes following him. The other smirked. Tom mounted his horse, tipped his hat, and rode off without a word. By noon, word had spread. The blacksmith's hammer fell heavy on iron as Tom passed. He stopped only to water his horse. The blacksmith, sweat dripping, gave him a look. "You're stirring the nest," the man said. "Maybe it needed stirring. Harold won't like it. I count on that." The blacksmith paused, then muttered, "You play with keys that don't fit your lock." Tom looked at him, cold and steady. Locks break. That afternoon, Tom rode the ridge and looked down at the valley. Fences sagged, posts leaning like tired men. Barn doors rattled in the wind, padlocks hanging loose. He dismounted, walked the fence line, and lifted the chain with his hand. The metal was rusted, easy to snap. He smiled faintly. At sundown, he stopped at a well where women drew water. Lydia's name was spoken soft between them. Tom stood at the edge, listening. "She keeps her head down," one said. "Harold makes her. She writes still. Not for long if he finds out." Tom stepped forward. "What do you know?" The women stiffened. One shook her head. "Nothing worth saying aloud." "You'll tell me anyway," Tom said. The older one met his eyes. "Your sister's fading. You don't see it yet, but she is." Tom clenched his jaw. "Not if I burn him first." Night fell as he rode toward the ranch. The valley below looked darker than he remembered, smoke curling from a single chimney. Cattle moved without sound, restless shadows. Every fence he passed leaned weaker, every gate hung looser, as if the land itself was tired of its master. Halfway down the slope, he heard hoofbeats behind him. He slowed. A lone rider approached, lantern swinging. When the man drew close, Tom saw Harold's grin cut through the dark. "Well, look who crawled back," Harold said, pulling his horse up beside him. Tom kept his eyes on the ranch lights. "You're late." "Late for what?" "For losing." Harold laughed. "You think a few papers in town change a damn thing? Those hills don't feed you. That pasture don't mean nothing without the cattle, and the cattle belong to me. Not for long." Harold leaned closer. "You always were a fool with numbers. Buy your little scraps, wave your papers around. End of the day, I got the sheriff, the bank, the men with guns. What do you have?" Tom turned his head slow, eyes steady. "Patience." Harold smirked. "And what about Lydia? You think she thanks you for stirring the mud? She prays at night you'd stayed gone. Every whisper of your name costs her. You want that on her shoulders?" Tom's hand tightened on the reins. "I don't take lessons in family from you." "You don't take much of anything," Harold said. "Never did. That's why she married me, and not some ghost who ran when things got hard." Tom's voice dropped low. "You don't own her. You don't own this land. You sure as hell don't own me." Harold laughed again, sharp and cruel. "Keep buying, brother. Every acre you steal costs you twice. Money runs out, rage burns out. But me, I endure." "You endure like rot endures," Tom said. Harold's grin faltered, only for a breath. He pulled the reins, backing his horse. "Careful. You're trespassing on more than land." Tom leaned forward, voice flat, "and you're standing on ground that's already breaking." Harold's eyes narrowed, but he forced a smirk. "Enjoy your scraps." He yanked the reins and rode off. Dust cloud trailing, Tom sat still, the valley stretching before him. The gates, the barns, the broken fences, they looked like pieces of a puzzle waiting for his hand. He reached into his coat, touched the folded deeds, and closed his fist. The night air pressed heavy, but his chest felt steady. He turned his horse toward the ranch house, twilight deepening around him, every hoofbeat carrying him closer to the heart of the fight. The ranch house stood quiet at night, boards creaking in the wind. Tom lit a lamp, its glow spilling across the table where he spread his father's weathered trunk. The iron lock gave way with a sharp snap. Inside, stacks of letters, brittle deeds, and folded maps lay buried under dust. He pulled one free, fingers smudged with ink. A floorboard groaned. Lydia stepped into the room, her shawl tight around her shoulders. "You shouldn't be digging there." "Why not?" Tom didn't look up. "Because Harold forbids it." "That's reason enough to keep going." She moved closer, voice sharp. "You think old papers change? What's happening now?" "They show how we got here." He held up a deed, edges frayed. "This land wasn't Harold's to begin with." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Tom spread several papers out. "Father left parcels in your name, not his. They were hidden." She shook her head. "No, he told me nothing. Because Harold took them before you could see." Tom pushed the letters toward her. "Look, his name's nowhere." Her hands trembled as she touched the pages. "If this is true." "It is." The door opened behind them. Ben stepped in, dirt still clinging to his boots. He froze when he saw the papers. "What's all this?" Tom didn't hesitate. "Proof Harold built his throne on lies." Ben frowned. "You sure? Read it yourself." Tom shoved a letter across the table. Ben scanned it, lips moving slow. He set it down heavy. "Your father wrote these words, not Harold." Lydia's face hardened. Then Harold knew. "He married me for land that was never his." Tom leaned forward. "He didn't just marry you. He stole you. Same way he stole everything." Lydia's voice cracked. "And I let him." "No," Tom said quickly. "You were trapped. He made sure of that." Ben shook his head. "This changes everything. If folks knew." "They can't know yet," Tom cut in. "Why not?" Ben's voice rose. "Because Harold has the sheriff. He has men who'll burn this house before truth spreads." The lamp flickered. The floor creaked again, louder, as if the house itself listened. Lydia whispered, "So what now?" Tom's jaw tightened. "We keep digging." Hours passed. Tom pulled letter after letter from the trunk. Old maps revealed boundaries drawn and redrawn, some marked with symbols. He found a false bottom, thin wood splintering under his knife. Inside lay more deeds, sealed in wax. He laid them out, breath shallow. "Here it is. The heart of it," Lydia whispered. "Father meant to protect us." Ben asked, "Then why hide it?" Tom's eyes darkened. "Because he feared Harold. He knew what kind of man he was becoming." Lydia sat back, clutching her shawl. "He was my husband. I thought I knew him." "You knew a mask," Tom said. "The man beneath it has been feeding off this valley for years." Ben looked at Tom. "So what's your move?" Tom stared at the papers. "I take back what he stole, piece by piece, until he has nothing left." Lydia's voice trembled. "And if he takes me down with him?" Tom met her eyes. "Not while I'm breathing." She looked away, tears glinting. "He'll kill you if he finds out. Then I'll kill him first." The room fell silent. Only the ticking of the clock filled the air. Ben finally spoke. "There's more here than land, Tom. Look." He held up a letter marked with smudged ink. "It names names. Men in town, the banker, even the sheriff." Tom snatched it, scanning fast. His throat tightened. "They were all in on it. Father warned us. He wrote it plain." Lydia whispered. "He said the valley was cursed." "Not cursed," Tom muttered. "Corrupted." Ben leaned on the table. "So it's bigger than Harold." Tom nodded. "Bigger. But Harold's the root." Lydia shook her head, voice low. "You think cutting one root stops the rot?" The whole tree is sick. Tom looked at her. Then I'll burn the tree. She flinched, and leave nothing standing. Better nothing than Harold's kingdom. Ben slammed his fist lightly on the table. Careful. Words like that spread. Folks get scared. Let them, Tom said. The lamp guttered, shadows sliding across the walls. Lydia stood, voice sharp. You don't understand. Harold hears whispers before they're even spoken. Someone in this house tells him everything. Tom froze. Who? Her silence cut deeper than words. Ben looked between them. You mean one of us? Lydia wouldn't answer. Tom's fists clenched. If you're protecting him, say it now. I'm not, Lydia snapped. But he always knows. Somehow he always knows. The old floor groaned beneath their feet, as if the boards kept secrets too. Tom gathered the deeds, tucking them inside his coat. I'll keep them safe, he said. Lydia whispered. Safe doesn't exist anymore, Ben muttered. Then we make it exist. Tom moved to the door. The night wind whistled through the cracks. He turned back once, voice steady. We fight with truth first, then with fire if we must. Lydia's voice broke. And if truth destroys us? Tom's answer came hard. Then we were already destroyed. He stepped out into the night, the papers heavy against his chest, the ranch creaking behind him like an old ghost warning him he'd gone too far. The night pressed hard against the ranch. The windows rattled in their frames, some already cracked, letting in the hiss of the wind. Inside the parlor, fire snapped in the hearth, throwing shadows long across the floor. Tom stood near the mantel, coat still on, papers in hand. He had chosen this room because Harold hated it. Too many memories of the father he had never lived up to. The front door slammed open. Heavy boots struck the wooden floor. Harold stepped in, shoulders broad, face tight with fury. His eyes found Tom at once. So it's true, Harold said. Depends on what you've heard. Harold's voice rose. You've been buying parcels that were mine. Not yours, Tom answered flatly. They've always been mine. They were stolen. I'm just taking them back. Harold barked a laugh, bitter and sharp. You think a few scraps of land make you a man? Tom held Harold's stare. I think they make me free of you. Harold stepped closer, boots thudding heavy. You always were weak. Hiding behind books, behind father's shadow, now behind papers and signatures. That's not power. That's cowardice. Tom didn't flinch. Then why are you shaking? The fire cracked. Harold's jaw worked, but no words came at first. He finally growled. Because you're meddling in things you don't understand. I understand enough, Tom said. I've read the letters. Father's deeds. The truth. Harold's face darkened. You had no right. I had every right. Lydia had every right. You lied to her. You lied to all of us. Harold's voice broke into a roar. She chose me. Tom's voice cut back, sharp. She was cornered. By you. By your greed. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the hiss of the fire. Harold moved to the window, smashed fist against the cracked glass until it split wider. Cold air swept in. You'll ruin this family, Harold muttered. Tom said, You ruined it long ago. Harold turned, eyes wet, though his face was hard. You don't know what I carried. Father's debts, his shame. I bore it all. You buried it under lies, Tom said, and called it strength. Harold stepped closer, pointing a finger. You think the valley will follow you. They fear me, Tom. They'll always fear me. Tom lifted the deeds, his hand steady. Fear doesn't last. Paper does, Harold sneered. So you'll drown me with ink, if that's what it takes. The room seemed to shrink around them. Footsteps creaked above Lydia, listening from the stairwell. Neither man looked up. Harold spoke low. Dangerous. You think you've won because you hold a few pages. But men like me don't fall to paper. We fall to fire, or not at all. Tom's gaze flicked to the hearth. Then maybe fire has its place. The words hung heavy. The flames roared, eating at the wood, sending sparks into the room. Harold's face was red in the glow, twisted between rage and something like fear. "You wouldn't dare," Harold said. Tom answered quietly, "You don't know me anymore." The silence broke when Lydia descended the stairs, voice trembling yet sharp. "Enough, both of you." Harold turned, eyes flashing. "Stay out of this." "No," she said. "This house has echoed with your shouting for years. Tonight it ends." Tom's voice steadied. "She deserves truth, Harold, not threats." Harold spat the words. "She deserves a husband who kept her alive while you ran off chasing dreams." Lydia's face twisted in pain. "You kept me alive by choking me." The words struck Harold like a slap. He staggered back a step, eyes darting to the fire as if searching for escape. Tom moved closer, voice calm but cutting. "It's over. I've bought enough land to choke your reach. The valley's shifting. They see you for what you are." Harold shook his head. "They'll never follow you." "They don't have to," Tom said. "They only have to stop following you." The fire popped, sending sparks onto the rug. Harold stomped them out with his boot, muttering, "This valley needs fear. Without it, men rot." Tom answered, "Then let it rot clean, not poisoned by you." Harold's hand clenched. "You'll regret this. I'll see you broken before I bow." Tom didn't move. "Then watch closely, because I'm still standing." The air grew colder through the broken window. Lydia stepped between them, voice steadier now. "Harold, leave." He glared at her. "You'd cast me out. I'd save what's left." Harold's chest rose heavy. His eyes moved from her to Tom, then back. "You think you've stripped me. You think this night is mine to lose. But I'll return, and when I do, you'll beg me for mercy." Tom replied, "We'll see who begs." The clock in the corner struck, its chime echoing through the room. Harold's jaw worked, teeth grinding. He finally turned, coat swinging, boots pounding toward the door. He wrenched it open, wind rushing in, rattling the house like a storm. Before stepping out, he looked back once. His voice was low, but it carried. "This land bleeds for me, and it will bury you." Then he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him, leaving the room heavy with smoke, firelight, and silence. Lydia sank into a chair, face pale. "He'll kill you." Tom set the deeds on the mantel, eyes fixed on the flames. "Let him try." The fire roared louder, shadows dancing over broken glass and cracked walls, as if the house itself had witnessed judgment passed. Outside, Harold's footsteps echoed into the night, each strike carrying rage and humiliation into the valley that no longer belonged to him. Word spread through the valley like smoke on dry wind. Harold wasn't quiet after the humiliation. He gathered men at the saloon, men who owed him favors, men who feared his name. He whispered of Tom's betrayal, painting him as a thief and a snake. By morning, rumors crawled across town like weeds. Tom heard them before breakfast. At the edge of the corral, Ben leaned against the fence, eyes wary. "They're saying you forged the deeds," Ben muttered. "Of course they are. They're saying you'll bleed the valley dry, sell it all to strangers." Tom tightened the rope on the gate. "Let them talk." Ben shook his head. "Talk grows teeth. You know Harold won't stop with words." Tom's voice was low. "Neither will I." Inside the barn, Lydia folded her arms tight, eyes red from sleepless nights. "He's poisoning the town. Folks who once pitied you now spit when your name's spoken." Tom answered steady. "Pity never bought me a loaf of bread." Her voice cracked. "And pride won't keep you alive." The barn fell quiet but for the sound of livestock shifting, restless in their pens. Tom ran a hand over the wood of the gate, scarred and weathered, like him. By afternoon, riders came up the lane. 3 of Harold's men, faces grim. One carried the sheriff's badge at his belt, though he hadn't worn it in years. They dismounted, boots grinding dust. The tallest spat. "Harold wants a word." Tom stood in the doorway of the barn, blocking their view of Lydia. "Then he can ride himself." "You're cornering him," the man said. "That won't end well," Tom replied. "Cornered animals are easier to catch." The man's face tightened. "He'll have the valley turn against you." Tom's eyes didn't waver. "Then they'll learn who owns the land under their boots." The men muttered curses and mounted again, dust rising as they rode off. Lydia stepped out, voice sharp. "You keep throwing stones at a man who builds walls higher than mountains." Tom looked at her, calm. "Even mountains crumble." That night, the fire in the hearth burned low as Tom spread maps and papers across the table. Ben sat opposite, jaw clenched, eyes scanning deeds. "You've got more land than he knows," Ben said. "Not enough yet." Ben leaned in. "He'll starve you out, block trade, scare off buyers. Then we find new ways," Tom replied. Ben exhaled. "You're colder than I remember." Tom's voice was steady. "Heat burned me once. Cold keeps me sharp." The door creaked. Lydia entered, carrying a folded letter. This came by rider, signed by Harold himself. Tom took it, broke the seal, and read silently. His jaw stiffened. Ben asked, "What's he want?" Tom's voice was flat. "He wants me at the courthouse. Claims I cheated him. Wants me shamed before the valley?" Lydia whispered, "Don't go." Tom looked at her. "If I don't, he'll call me a coward. If I do, I'll show them he's nothing but pride." The next morning, the courthouse was thick with boadies. Harold stood at the front, polished boots, clean coat, voice loud enough to fill the hall. "He forged papers," Harold declared. "He stole what's mine. He means to ruin us all." Murmurs swelled. Tom stepped forward, holding a bundle of deeds bound in twine. He laid them on the table, one by one. "These are signed by the governor's hand," Tom said. "Witnessed, sealed, paid in full." Gasps stirred the crowd. The sheriff, older and weary, leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the papers. "They're legal," he said. Harold's face twisted. "You'd side with him?" The sheriff's voice was dry. "I side with the seal." The crowd shifted, whispers rippling. Harold slammed his fist on the table. "You think this makes you strong, Tom? You think ink makes you more than dirt under my boots?" Tom's voice cut sharp. "It makes me the owner of the land your boots stand on." The room went still. Even the sheriff's eyes lifted. Harold's face flushed red, pride splintering under the weight of silence. He shoved past Tom, storming out into the street, cursing under his breath. Tom gathered the deeds, slid them back under his arm. Lydia touched his sleeve as he turned. "You've made him desperate." Tom whispered, "Good." The night was quiet when they returned to the ranch. Tom walked the fence lines, listening to the cattle low in the dark, the creak of wood under his hand. The valley seemed to breathe differently now, half with him, half against. Ben joined him at the gate. "You stood taller than I expected." Tom looked out over the land. His land, shadows stretching long under the moon. "I didn't stand tall. I just didn't bow." The words lingered in the stillness. Behind them, the house glowed faint in the dark, smoke curling from the chimney. Somewhere beyond, Harold nursed his wounds, plotting. But for the first time, Tom felt the valley tilt his way. The night bled slowly into gray. Tom rose before the house stirred, boots sliding across wooden floors that groaned with memory. He stepped outside, the air raw with dew, the ridgeline ahead faint against the paling sky. The land was quiet, as if waiting for him to claim it with his presence. Lydia found him at the fence line, arms folded against the chill. Her eyes were tired, but her voice steady. "You didn't sleep." "No, you don't have to carry it all." Tom glanced at the posts. Some new, some old, and split. I carried nothing for too long. That's why he thought he owned it. Her words cut soft. And now you've taken everything from him. I didn't take. I held on. You broke him. Tom's eyes narrowed on the far ridge. He broke himself. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of cattle shifting in the pen. Lydia lowered her gaze. And what about us? What's left? Tom's reply came slow. What we build, not what was buried. The sun's edge pushed above the horizon, staining the fields gold. Tom walked the line, hand brushing the rough wood of the posts. Each scar in the grain felt like an echo of something older than him. Behind him came a voice, raspy but firm. Harold. He limped along the path, pride cracked but not erased. His coat hung loose, face pale from sleepless rage. Tom stopped, turned. You shouldn't be here. Harold smirked, though it faltered. This land listens to me more than it listens to you. Tom shook his head. Not anymore. You think a few papers and a sheriff's word make you king? Harold's voice shook with fury. Tom's answer was blunt. No, but it makes you a liar in front of your own people. Harold stepped closer, breath ragged. You ruined me. You ruined yourself, Tom replied. Harold's eyes flicked to Lydia, lingering. And you stand with him now. Lydia held his stare. I stand where truth stands. He laughed, bitter, hollow. Truth. Truth is what people believe, and they still fear my name more than his. Tom's jaw tightened. Fear fades. The sun burns it off. Harold's hands trembled as he pointed at the ridge. You'll never wash me out of this land. My blood is in its dirt. Tom stepped forward. So is mine. So is hers. That's what you never understood. You thought it was yours alone. But land doesn't belong to pride. It belongs to those who tend it, who mend its fences, who wake with it at dawn. For a moment, Harold said nothing. His shoulders slumped, breath heavy. He looked smaller than he ever had. Lydia's voice softened. Go home, Harold. Whatever home you have left. He spat in the dirt, eyes burning one last time at Tom. This isn't over. Tom's answer was quiet but sharp. Yes, it is. Harold turned, boots dragging across the ground as he limped away. His figure shrank against the rising light until he vanished beyond the trees. Tom exhaled, long and heavy, the weight of years easing off his chest. He leaned on the fence, eyes tracing the sunlight spilling across the pasture. Lydia stood beside him, arms brushing his. You're free now, she whispered. No, Tom said. Just responsible. She smiled faintly. That's better. Ben came up from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag, eyes flicking from one to the other. He gone. Tom nodded. For now. Ben tilted his head at the horizon. Sunrise looks different today. Tom studied it, the light warming the valley, because it's ours. The three of them stood in silence, the ridge glowing brighter, shadows retreating. Tom felt the land breathe with him, not as a battlefield, but as a promise. The fences were mended, the livestock calm, the house waiting with its windows lit by dawn. For the first time, the valley did not feel haunted. It felt alive. Tom whispered, almost to himself. This is where it begins. Lydia took his hand. Ben set his rag aside, leaning against the post. The world was quiet, steady, and theirs. The ridge caught the full fire of morning, and with it, the weight of yesterday broke apart like mist.